Soap cutter wire replacement and tightening. A tutorial video. Tools needed. 2 half-inch wrench, 1 pliers, 1 wire cutter, 1 pick, 1 replacement wire. First, we will cut a wire. This will simulate the broken wire to replace. Step 1. Remove protective rubber caps. Step 2. Loosen the wire locking nut. To loosen the wire locking nut, you must use one wrench on the bolt head to hold it in place. Use the second wrench to loosen the adjacent nut, which locks the wire in place. Once the second nut is loose, you can simply further loosen it with your fingers. You want to provide enough room to untwist the wire and pull it out. You may need to use the wrench again to continue loosening the nut to give enough clearance to untwist the wire and pull it out. Step 3. Uncoil the wire from around the bolt. Once you have moved the wire locking nut enough, you can now use the pick to push the coiled end of the wire out and around the bolt to free it. Step 4. Pull out broken wire. Once the coiled end is free, you can use your pliers to grip and pull the broken wire completely out. Step 5. Loosen the correct adjacent wire locking nut so that you can remove the rest of the cutting wire in the same methods as steps 2 through 4. Once the wire locking nut is loose, use the pick again to uncoil the wire wrapped around the bolt. Pull the looped portion of the wire out through the hole so you can then pull the wire completely out with your pliers. With the bad wire removed, we can now proceed to install the new replacement wire. Step 6. String the wire. Begin by feeding the wire through the notch in the bolt and under the nuts. Pull it to the back and thread it through the hole. Loop it around and thread through the second hole. Pull the wire to the front, feeding it through the notch in the second bolt and under the nuts. Pull the wire out to about the length of the handles and cut the wire. Step 7. Lock the wire and cut. To lock the wire, first wrap it around the bolt, then using the pliers, force it into the groove. Remember to always keep the grooves vertical. Once the wire is seated into the groove, use the wrench to tighten the wire locking nut. Keep pressure on the wire in the groove to make a tight grip. Keep tightening and holding the wire until the main bolt begins to turn as well. At this point, you need both wrenches again. Use one to hold the bolt still while the second wrench continues to tighten the wire locking nut. Remember to keep the groove in the bolt vertical. The bolt head and the wire locking nut should now be as close as you can get them. Now use your wire cutter to cut the excess wire off the bolt and as close as possible to the bolt. Step 8. Adjust both bolts forward. We do this step now so at the end we can fully tighten the wires properly. These two are the ones we want to focus on for this step. While holding the bolt in place, loosen the nut a few turns. Now close the space created by tightening the innermost nut, the one by itself on the inside of the cutter. Once the bolt has been adjusted forward enough, be sure to tighten these two nuts to keep the bolt in place. Repeat step 8 to adjust the second bolt forward. Step 9. Lock the wire and cut. Repeat the same process as in step 7. It is best if you can pull as much wire tight in this step. Be sure that you keep the groove in the bolt vertical, then assure a tight grip between the bolt head and the wire locking nut. At this point, use your wire cutter to cut off the excess wire as close to the bolt head as possible. Step 10. Tightening the cutting wires. Loosen both of these nuts so we can adjust the whole bolt backward, opposite now to the process in step 8. This process will now tighten the wire, which is essential for cutting your loaf of soap. Once loose, you should only need to tighten this nut while holding the bolt head in place. This pulls the bolt head backward, tightening the wire. Repeat the process in step 10 to tighten the adjacent bolt and wire. When tight enough, the string should sound similar and pleasant. Step 11. Finish up. Replace the rubber protective caps on the bolt heads. Congratulations, your cutter is fully restrung with tight new wires. Happy soaping!